boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Good evening, everybody. Let me fix up my stuff here. Let me restart you from scratch. Turn you up a little bit. All right. Hey, Justin. Oh, this is Final Fantasy 14. Is the background. This is right. Oh well, I had the book up and then I goofed and closed it. So, as a quick recap, for those who either not here last time, or those who just wish to have a recap, who is their first stream. Unfortunate deaths, unfortunate. So, World War Z is written as if it is a collection of stories. One-off survivor accounts that they are recanting their tales after World War Z or the Great Panic has ended. Okay? And we're at this stage in the book now. So the stories start from way before the panic starts at the very beginning, and now we're kind of just approaching the crescendo of where it gets its worst, where the world is starting to be overtaken. So like the previous story we heard was about a man who was trying to get to a dry dock where a bunch of ships were boarding, except most of them weren't even seaworthy. And now, in roughly 1 minute, we're going to continue with our next survivor story, which will be taking place in Topeka, Kansas, USA. Right, so the rules are already up in the pinned comment, but I will not be reading stream or reading chat during this stream, except at breakpoints. The breakpoints are in general going to be... Oh, what's the word? The breakpoints in general are going to be when the ads are due. So usually once an hour, give or take. Also, streamer. Go. Perfect. Gotta share this around a little bit. Perfect. Let me go in here. Just gonna share some stuff around, and then we'll be good to go. Perfect. The music in the background is just a chill little post-apocalyptic music kind of volume. It is meant to just be kind of barely there in the background that you hear it, but not enough to kind of overpower this. Okay, that should be good. That should be good. All right. And without further ado, we shall begin. So, we shall talk to you all in about an hour. Rat King, what I would say do is let the first like ad play for the 30 minutes. Actually, you know what? Rat King, apologies. If you can, run the ads now, and that'll get us out the way. So we'll have a good baseline. Because at the moment, the pre-rolls are going to be on for 25 minutes. Yep, it is New Vegas. It is post-apocalypse. It is just eerie kind of the world is empty type of music. Got my key. Be good. Oh, we can't run the ads. My apologies. Never mind. Okay. All right. In that case, we shall begin. I will try to pause before the ads hit. If the ads do hit before I get a chance to. Oh, and fair enough. We'll give it another 90 seconds. We'll let people kind of trickle in. So how's everyone doing tonight? Looking forward to continuing the book. And if it's your first time being here, then I hope you're looking forward to hearing it. World War Z is an amazing, amazing story. The book, to be clear, not the. We don't talk about the movie. We don't talk about the movie. The game is not too bad though. We are going to do a playthrough of the game at some point. The game is so much closer to the books, it's not even funny. Like hilariously closer. Good, that's good. I'm still waiting for more content to come out for Menace before I play it. Kind of giving I'm waiting for the first major content drop because it's just been kind of like a little drip feed of stuff over the last few months. I'm waiting for the big like here's like 10 new mission types and new enemies and blah blah blah. Blah. Oh, there we go. All right. 3 minutes and we should be good. Yeah, no problem, Schroeder. I hope you have a good night, buddy. I hope you have a good night's rest. The VOD will be here for you when you want to see it. Oh god, the ad break. Right as we get a spike in viewers too. Unfortunate. So if you are just joining in the stream, please do hang on for a few minutes as we are going to be starting very shortly. We're just getting the ad break out of the way. I was very up in the air on whether to do a stream tonight. To be honest, I was very, very all over the place. Oh, is it still showing that? That's funny. That's fine. I was actually contemplating playing Project Zomboid, but I was like, you know what? I'm tired. I want to mentally unwind. Let's just do a reading stream. And I know people have been asking to continue this. And I want to continue it as well because we're just getting to the good part. At least what I consider the good part from my little experience with this. Okay. Turn that off. We'll give it one more minute and then we'll keep going. I have my tea. Got my water for when the tea runs out. Oh shit, let me mute my phone actually. Let me mute my phone. Alright, I'm gonna give it 30 more seconds and then we'll get chugging here. My game, okay. Yep, it's fine. I shouldn't be AFK kicked. Alright. Okay. Well, now we shall begin. So, like I said, chat, I'm not going to be reading chat at all until the designated break times. So my apologies if I miss anything. But the mods are here. Rat King is here for the moment. Sliver will be here. Not Sliver. Sago will be here soon enough. And then we'll see you in a bit. And I hope you all enjoy. Topeka, Kansas, USA. Pretext. Sharon be considered beautiful by almost any standard, with long red hair, sparkling green eyes, and the body of a dancer or a pre-war supermodel. She also has the mind of a 4-year-old girl. We are at the Rothman Rehabilitation Home for Feral Children. Dr. Roberta Kellner, Sharon's caseworker, describes her condition as lucky. At least she has language skills, a cohesive thought process, she explains. It's rudimentary, but at least it's fully functional. Dr. Kellner is eager for the interview, but Dr. Summers, Rothman's program director, is not. Funding has always been spotty for this program. The present administration is threatening to close it down altogether. Sharon is shy at first. She will not shake my hand and seldom makes eye contact. Although Sharon was found in the ruins of Wichita, there is no way of knowing where her story originally occurred. We were in church, Mommy and me. Daddy told us that he would come find us. Daddy had to go do something. We had to wait for him in church. Everybody was there. They all had stuff. They had cereal and water and juice and sleeping bags and flashlights and Jemime's rifle. Mrs. Randolph had one. She wasn't supposed to. They were dangerous. She told me they were dangerous. She was Ashley's mommy. Ashley was my friend. I asked her where was Ashley. She started to cry. Mommy told me not to ask her about Ashley. Told Mrs. Rudolph that she was sorry. Mrs. Randolph was dirty. She had red and brown on her dress. She was fat. She had big, soft arms. There were other kids, Jill and Abby, and other kids. Mrs. McGraw was watching them. They had crayons. They were coloring on the wall. Mommy told me to go play with them. She told me it was okay. She said Pastor Dan said it was okay. Pastor Dan was there. He was trying to make people listen to him. Please, everyone. She mimics a deep, low voice. Please stay calm. The authorities are coming. Just stay calm and wait for the authorities. No one was listening to him. Everyone was talking. Nobody was sitting. People were trying to talk on their things. Jemime's holding a cell phone. They were angry at their things, throwing them and saying bad words. I felt bad for Pastor Dan. He mimics the sound of a siren. Outside, he does it again, starting soft, then growing, then fading out again multiple times. Mommy was talking to Mrs. Cormode, other mommies. They were fighting. Mommy was getting mad. Mrs. Cormode kept saying, in an angry drawl, "Well, what if? What else can you do?" Mommy was shaking her head. Mrs. Cormode was talking with her hands. I didn't like Mrs. Cormode. She was Pastor Dan's wife. She was bossy and mean. Somebody yelled, "Here they come!" Mommy came and picked me up. They took our bench and put it next to the door. They put all the benches next to the door. "Quick, jam the door!" She mimics several different voices. "I need a hammer, nails. They're in the parking lot. They're coming this way." He turns to Dr. Kellner. "Can I?" Dr. Summers looks unsure. Dr. Kellner smiles and nods. I later learn that the room is soundproofed for this reason. Sharon mimics the moan of a zombie. It is undoubtedly the most realistic I have ever heard. Clearly, by their discomfort, Summers and Kellner agree. They were coming. They came bigger. Again she moaned, then follows up by pounding her right fist on the table. They wanted to come in. Her blows are powerful, mechanical. People screamed. Mommy hugged me tight. Okay. Her voice softens as she begins to stroke her own hair. Don't let them get you. Now she bangs both fists on the table, her strikes becoming more chaotic as if to simulate multiple ghouls. Brace the door! Hold it! Hold it! She simulates the shattering of glass. The windows broke. The windows in the front next to the door. The lights got black. Grown-ups got scared. They screamed. Her voice returns to her mother's. Baby, I won't let them get you. Her hands go from her hair to her face, gently stroking her forehead and cheeks. Sharon gives Kellner a questioning look. Kellner nods. Sharon's voice suddenly simulates the sound of something large breaking. A deep, phlegm-filled rumble from the bottom of her throat. They're coming in! Shoot 'em! Shoot 'em! She makes the sound of gunfire. Then I won't let them get you. I won't let them get you. Sharon suddenly looks away, over my shoulder to something that isn't there. The children! Don't let them get the children! That was Mrs. Cornwall. Save the children! Save the children! Sharon mimics more gunshots. She balls her hands into a large double fist, bringing it down hard on an invisible form. Now the kid started crying. She simulates stabbing, punching, striking with objects. Abby cried hard. Mrs. Cornwall picked her up. She mimes lifting something, or someone, and swinging them against the wall. And then Abby stopped. She goes back to stroking her own face. Her mother's voice has become harder. Shh, it's okay, baby, it's okay. Hands move down from her face to her throat, tightening into a strangling grip. I won't let them get you. I won't let them get you. Sharon begins to gasp for air. Dr. Summers makes a move to stop her. Dr. Kellner puts up a hand. Sharon suddenly ceases, throwing her arms out to the sound of a gunshot. Warm and wet, salty in my mouth, stinging my eyes. Home chat being pinged. Sorry about that. Arms picked me up and carried me. She gets up from the table, mimicking a motion close to a football, carried me into the parking lot. Run, Sharon, don't stop. This is a different voice now, not her mother's. Just run, 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 run. They pulled her away from me. Her arms let me go. They were big, soft arms. Uzir, Olkhon Island, Lake Baikal, the Holy Russian Empire. Pretext. The room is bare except for a table, 2 chairs, and a large wall mirror, which is almost sure to be one-way glass. I sit across from my subject, writing on the pad provided for me. My transcriber has been forbidden for security reasons. Maria Zuganova's face is worn. Hair is graying. Her body strains the seams of the fraying uniform she insists on wearing for this interview. Technically, we are alone, although I sense watching eyes behind the room's one-way glass. End of pretext. We didn't know that there was a great panic. We were completely isolated. About a month before it began, about the same time as that American newswoman broke the story, our camp was placed on indefinite communication blackout. All televisions were removed from the barracks. The personal radios and cell phones too. I had one of those cheap, disposable types with 5 prepaid minutes. It was all my parents could afford. I was supposed to use it to call them on my birthday. First birthday away from home. We were stationed in North Ossetia, Alania, one of our wild southern republics. Our official duty was quote-unquote peacekeeping, preventing ethnic strife between the Ossetia and the Ingush minorities. Our rotation was up about the same time they cut us from the world. Matter of quote-unquote state security, they called it. Were they? Everyone. Our officers, military police, even a plain-clothed civilian just seemed to appear one day out of nowhere. He was a mean little bastard. The thin rat face. That's what we called him. Rat. Did you ever try to find out who he was? What, me? Personally? Never. Neither did anyone else. Oh, we griped. Soldiers always gripe. But there also wasn't time for any serious complaints. Right after the blackout was put into effect, we were placed on full combat alert. Up until then, it had been easy duty. lazy, monotonous, and broken only by the occasional mountain stroll. Now, we were in those mountains for days at a time, with full battle dress and ammo. We were in every village, every house. We questioned every peasant and traveler, and I don't know, goat that crossed our path. Questioned them for what? I didn't know. Is everyone in your family present? Has anyone gone missing? Has anyone been attacked by a rabid animal or man? Was the part that confused me the most. Rabid? I understood the animal part, but man? There were a lot of physical inspections too, stripping these people to their bare skin while the medics searched every inch of their bodies for something. We weren't told what. Didn't make sense. Nothing did. We once found a whole cache of weapons. 74s, a few older 47s, plenty of ammo, probably bought from some corrupt opportunist right in our battalion. We didn't know who the weapons belonged to. Drug runners or the local gangsters, maybe even those supposed reprisal squads that were the reason for our deployment in the first place. And what did we do? We left it all. That little civilian, Ratface, he had a private meeting with some of the village elders. I don't know what was discussed, but I can tell you that they looked scared half to death, crossing themselves, praying silently. We didn't understand. We were confused, angry. We didn't understand what the hell we were doing out there. We had this one old veteran in our platoon, Baburin. He'd fought in Afghanistan, twice in Chechnya. It was rumored that during Yeltsin's crackdown, his BMP-1 was the first to fire on the Duma. We used to like to listen to his stories. He was always good-natured, always drunk, when he thought he could get away with it. He changed after the incident with the weapon. He stopped smiling. There were no more stories. I don't think he ever touched a drop after that. And when he spoke to you, which was rare, the only thing he ever said was, "This isn't good. Something's going to happen." Whenever I tried to ask him about it, he would just shrug and walk away. Morale was pretty low after that. People were tense, suspicious. Ratface was always there, in the shadows, listening and watching, whispering into the ears of our officers. He was with us the day we swept into a little no-name town, this primitive hamlet at what looked like the edge of the world. We'd executed our standard searches and interrogations. We were just about to pack it in. Suddenly, this little... One moment, chat. Apologies. I'll start. He was with us the day we swept into a little no-name town, this primitive hamlet at what looked like the edge of the world. We'd executed our standard searches and interrogations. We were just about to pack it in. Suddenly, this child, this little girl, came running down the only road in town. She was crying, obviously terrified. She was chattering to her parents. I wish I could have taken the time to learn their language. And pointing across the field, there was a tiny figure, another little girl, staggering the mud towards us. Lieutenant Tikhonov raised his binoculars, and I watched his face lose its color. Ratface came up next to him, gave a look through his own glasses, then whispered something in the lieutenant's ear. Petrenko, the platoon sharpshooter, was ordered to raise his weapon and center the girl in his sights. Did. Do you have her? I have her. Shoot. That's how it went, I think. I remember there was a pause. Petrenko looked up at the lieutenant and asked him to repeat the order. You heard me, he said angrily. I was farther away than Petrenko. Even I'd heard him. I said eliminate the target now. I could see the tip of his rifle was shaking. He was a skinny little runt, the bravest or the strongest, but suddenly he lowered his weapon and said he wouldn't do it. Just like that. No, sir. It felt like the sun froze in the sky. No one knew what to do, especially Lieutenant Tikhonov. Everyone was looking at one another. Then, we were all looking out at the field. Ratface was walking out there, slowly, almost casually. The little girl was now close enough so we could see her face. Her eyes were wide, locked on Ratface. Her arms were raised, and I could just make out this high-pitched, rasping moan. He met her halfway across the field. It was over before most of us realized what had happened. In one smooth motion, Ratface pulled a pistol from underneath his coat, shot her right between the eyes, then turned around and sauntered back towards us. A woman, probably the little girl's mother, exploded into sobs. She fell to her knees, spitting and cursing at him. Ratface didn't seem to care or even notice. He just whispered something to Lieutenant Tikhonov, then remounted the BMP as if he was hailing a Moscow taxicab. That night, lying awake in my bunk, I tried not to think about what had happened. Tried not to think about the fact the MPs had taken Petrenko away, or that our weapon had been locked in the armory. I knew I should have felt bad for the child, angry, even vengeful towards Ratface, and maybe even a little bit guilty because I didn't lift a finger to stop it. I knew those were the kind of emotions I should have been feeling. At that point, the only thing I could feel was fear. I kept thinking about what Barbarin had said, that something bad was going to happen. I just wanted to go home, see my parents. What if there'd been some horrible terrorist attack? What if it was a war? My family lived in Bikin, almost within sight of the Chinese border. Needed to speak to them, to make sure they were okay. I worried so much that I started throwing up, so much so that they checked me into the infirmary. That's why I missed the patrol that day. That's why I was still on bed rest when they came back the following afternoon. Now, apologies, but I need to take a break for 2 minutes, and I will be right back. Sorry about that, everyone. We are back. I was in my bunk, rereading an outdated copy of Semnestat 2. I heard a commotion, vehicle engines, voices. a crowd already assembled on the parade ground. I pushed my way through and saw Arcady standing in the center of the mob. Arcady was the heavy machine gunner from my squad, a big bear of a man. We were friends because he kept the other men away from me, if you understand what I mean. He said I reminded him of his sister. He smiles sadly. I liked him. There was someone crawling at his feet. It looked like an old woman. There was a burlap hood over her head and a chain leash wrapped around her neck. Her dress was torn and the skin of her legs had been scraped clean off. There was no blood, just this black pus. Arcady was well into a loud, angry speech. No more lies, no more orders to shoot civilians on sight. And that's why I put the little Zopelis down. I looked for Lieutenant Tikhonov. Couldn't see him anywhere. Got a ball of ice in my stomach. Because I wanted you all to see. Arcady lifted the chain, pulling the old babushka up by her throat. He grabbed the hood, it off. Her face was grey, just like the rest of her. Her eyes were wide and fierce. She snarled like a wolf, tried to grab Arcady. He wrapped one powerful hand around her throat, holding her at arm's length. I want you all to see why we are here. Grabbed the knife from his belt and plunged it into the woman's heart. I gasped. We all did. It was buried up to the hilt, and she still continued to squirm and growl. You see? He shouted, stabbing her several more times. You see? This is what they're not telling us. This is what they have us breaking our back to find. We'd see heads start to nod. A few grunts of agreement. Arcady continued. What if these things are everywhere? What if they make it back home? Where our families are right now? He was trying to make contact with as many of us as possible. He wasn't paying enough attention to the old woman. His grip loosened. He pulled free and bit him on the hand. Arcady roared. His fist caved in the old woman's face. She fell to his feet, writhing and gurgling that black goo. He finished the job with his boot. We all heard her skull crack. Blood was trickling down the gouge in Arcady's fist. He shook it at the sky, screaming as the veins in his neck began to bulge. We want to go home, he bellowed. We want to protect our families. Others in the crowd began to pick it up. Yes, we want to protect our families. This is a free country. This is a democracy. You can't keep us in prison. I was shouting too, panting with the rest. That old woman, the creature that could take a knife in the heart without dying. What if they were back home? What if they were threatening our loved ones? My parents. All the fear, all the doubt, every tangled emotion all fused into rage. We want to go home. We want to go home. Chanting, and then sound cracked past my ear and Arcady's left eye imploded. I don't remember running or inhaling the tear gas. I don't remember when the Spetsnaz commandos appeared. But suddenly, they were all around us, beating us down, shackling us together. One of them stepping on my chest so hard, I thought I was going to die right then and there. Was that the decimation? No, that was the beginning. We weren't the first army unit to rebel. Victory started about the time the MPs first closed down the base. About the time we staged our little demonstration, the government had decided how to restore order. She straightens her uniform, composes herself, before speaking. To quote-unquote decimate. I used to think it just meant to wipe out, cause horrible damage, destroy. It actually means to kill by a percentage of 10. 1 out of every 10 must die. And that's exactly what they did to us. The Spetsnaz had us assemble on the parade ground, full dress uniform. Our new commanding officer gave a speech about duty and responsibility, about our sworn oath to protect the motherland, how we had betrayed that oath, our selfish treachery and individual cowardice. I'd never heard words like that before. Duty? Responsibility? Russia, my Russia, was nothing but an apolitical mess. We lived in chaos and corruption. We were just trying to get through the day. Even the army was no bastion of patriotism. It was a place to learn a trade, get food, and a bed, and maybe even a little money to send home when the government decided it was convenient to pay its soldiers. Oath to protect the motherland? Those weren't the words of my generation. That was what you'd hear from the old, great, patriotic war veterans. The kind of broken, demented geezers who used to besiege Red Square with their tattered Soviet banners and their rows and rows of medals pinned to their faded, moth-eaten uniforms. Duty to the motherland was a joke, but I wasn't laughing. I knew the executions were coming. The armed men surrounding us, the men in the guard towers. I was ready. Every muscle in my body was tensing for the shot. Then I heard those words. You spoiled children think democracy is a God-given right. You expect it. You demand it. Well, now you're going to get your chance to practice. His exact words, stamped behind my eyelids the rest of my life. What did he mean? We would be the ones to decide who would be broken up into groups of 10. We would have to vote on which one of us was going to be executed. Then we, the soldiers, we would be the ones to personally murder our friend. They rolled these little pushcarts past us. I can still hear their creaking wheels. They were full of stones about the size of your hand, sharp and heavy. Some cried out, pleaded with us, begged like children. Some, like Baburin, simply knelt there silently, on his knees, staring right into my face as I brought the rock down onto his. She sighs softly, glancing over her shoulder at the one-way glass. Brilliance. Sheer fucking brilliance. Conventional executions might have reinforced discipline, might have restored order from the top down, but by making us all accomplices, they held us together not just by fear, but by guilt as well. Could have said no, could have refused and been shot ourselves, but we didn't. We went right along with it. We all made a conscious choice, and because that choice carried such a high price, I don't think anyone ever wanted to make another one again. We relinquished our freedom that day, even when we were more than happy to see it go. That moment on, we lived in true freedom. The freedom to point to someone else and say, they told me to do it. It's their fault, not mine. The freedom, God help us to say, I was only following orders. Yeah, we got time. Bridgetown, Barbados, the West Indies Federation. Trevor's Bar personifies the Wild West Indies, or more specifically, each island's quote unquote special economic zone. This is not a place most people would associate with order and tranquility of post war Caribbean life. It is not meant to be. Fenced off from the rest of the island and catering to a culture of chaotic violence and debauchery. The special economic zones are engineered specifically to separate off-islanders from their money. My discomfort seems to please E. Sean Collin. The giant Texan slides a shot of quote-unquote Hill Devil rum in my direction, then swings his massive boot-clad feet onto the table. They haven't come up with a name for what I used. Not a real one, not yet. Independent contractor. Sounds like I should be laying drywall and smearing plaster. Private security sounds like some dumbass mall guard. Mercenary is the closest, I guess, but at the same time about as far from the real me as you could have gotten. Mercenary sounds like some crazed out Nam vet, all hats and handle stash, pumping in some third world cesspool. He can't hack it back in the real world. That wasn't me. Yeah, I was a vet, and yeah, I used my training for cash. Funny thing about the army, they always promise to teach you marketable skills. But they never mentioned that. By far, there ain't nothing more marketable than knowing how to kill someone while keeping others from being killed. Maybe I was a mercenary, but you'd never know it to look at me. I was clean cut, nice car, nice house, even a housekeeper who came in once a week. I had plenty of friends, marriage prospects, and my handicap at the country club was almost as good as the pros. Most importantly, I worked for a company no different from any other before the war. There was no cloak and dagger, no back rooms and midnight envelopes, vacation days and sick days, full medical, and a sweet dental package. I paid my taxes too much. I paid into my IRA. I could have worked overseas. Lord knows there was plenty of demand. But after seeing what my buddies went through in the last brush fire, I said screw it. Let me guard some fat CEO or worthless dumb celebrity. And that's where I found myself when the panic hit. You don't mind if I don't mention any names, okay? Some of these people are still alive, or their estates are still active, and can you believe they're still threatening to sue? After all that's gone down? Okay, so I can't name names or places, but figure it's an island. A big island. A long island. Right next to Manhattan. You can't sue me for that, right? My client, I'm not really sure what he did. Something in entertainment or pie finance beats me. I think he might have been one of those senior shareholders in my firm. Whatever, he had bucks, lived in his amazing pad by the beach. Our client liked to know people who were known by all. The plan was to provide safety for those who could raise his image during and after the war, playing Moses to the scared and famous. You know what? They fell for it. The actors and singers and rappers and pro athletes and just the professional faces, like the ones you see on talk shows or reality shows, or even that little rich, spoiled, tired-looking whore who was famous for just being a rich, spoiled, tired-looking whore. There was that record mogul guy with big old diamond earring. He had his tricked-out AK with a grenade launcher. He loved to talk about it, how it was an exact replica of the one from Scarface. I didn't have the heart to tell him that Senor Montana had used a 16A1. There was the political comedy guy, you know, the one with the show. He was snorting blow between the airbags of this teeny Thai stripper while spewing about how what was happening wasn't just about the living versus the dead. It would send shockwaves through every facet of our society. Social, economic, political, even environmental. said that, subconsciously, everyone already knew the truth during the Great Denial. That's why they wigged out so hard when the story was finally broken. It all actually kind of made sense. Until he started spewing about high fructose corn syrup and the feminization of America. Crazy, I know, but you kinda expected those people to be there. I did. What I didn't expect was all their quote unquote. Every one of them, no matter who or what they did, had to have at least, I don't know how many stylists and publicists and personal assistants. Some of them, I think, were pretty cool. It was just doing it for the money. Or because they figured they'd be safe there. Young people just trying to get a leg up. Can't fault them for that. Some of the others, though, real pricks, all high on the smell of their own piss. Just rude and pushy and ordering everyone else around. One guy sticks out in my mind, only because he wore this baseball cap that read, "Get it done." I think he was the chief handler of the fat fuck who won that talent show. That guy must have had 14 people around him. I remember thinking at first that it would be impossible to take care of all these people. But after my initial tour of the premises, I realized our boss had planned for everything. He transformed his home into a survivalist's wet dream. He had enough dehydrated food to keep an army fed for years, as well as an endless supply of water from a desalinizer that ran right out into the ocean. He had wind turbines, solar panels, and backup generators, with giant fuel tanks buried right under the courtyard. Had enough security measures to hold off the living dead forever. High walls, motion sensors, and weapons. Oh, the weapons. Yeah, our boss had really done his homework. What he was most proud of was the fact that every room in the house was wired for a simultaneous webcam that went out all over the world 24/7. This was the real reason for having all of his quote unquote closest and best friends over. He didn't just want to ride out the storm in comfort and luxury. He wanted everyone to know he'd done it. That was the celebrity angle. His way of ensuring high profile exposure. Not only did you have a webcam in almost every room, there was all the usual press you'd find on the Oscars red carpet. I honestly never knew how big an industry entertainment journalism was. There had to be dozens of them from all these magazines and TV shows. How are you feeling? I heard that a lot. How are you holding up? What do you think is going to happen? And I swear, I even heard someone ask, what are you wearing? For me, the most surreal moment was standing in the kitchen with some of the staff and other bodyguards. All of us watching the news that was showing. Guess what? Us. The cameras were literally in the other room, pointed at some of the quote-unquote stars as they sat on the couch, watching another news channel. The feed was live from New York's Upper East Side. The dead were coming right up 3rd Avenue. People were taking them on, hand to hand, hammers and pipes. The manager of a Models Sporting Goods was handing out his baseball bat and shouting, "Get him in the head!" There was this one guy on rollerblades. He had a hockey stick in his hand and a big old meat cleaver bolted to the blade. He was doing an easy 30. At that speed, he might have taken a neck or two. The camera saw the whole thing. The rotted arm that shot out from the sewer drain right in front of him. The poor guy backflipping into the air, coming down hard on his face, then being dragged screaming by his ponytail into the drain. At that moment, the camera in our living room swung back, catch the reactions of the watching celebs. There were a few gasps, some honest, some staged. I remember thinking I had less respect for the ones who tried to fake some tears than I did for the little spoiled whore who called the rollerblading guy a dumbass. Hey, at least she was being honest. I remember I was standing next to this guy, Sergey, a miserable, sad-faced, hulking motherfucker. His stories about growing up in Russia convinced me that not all third world cesspools had to be tropical. It was then the camera was catching the reactions of the beautiful people that he mumbled something to himself in Russian. The only word I could make out was Romanovs, and I was about to ask him what he meant when we all heard the alarm go off. Something had triggered the pressure sensors we'd placed several miles around the wall. They were sensitive enough to detect just one zombie. Now, they were all going crazy. Our radios were squawking. Contact! Contact! Southwest corner! Shit, there's hundreds of them! It was a damn big house. It took me a few minutes to get to my firing position. I didn't understand why the lookout was so nervous. So what if there were a couple hundred? They'd never get over the wall. Then I heard him shout, "They're running! Holy fucking shit, they're fast!" Fast zombies. That turned my gut. They could run. They could climb. If they could climb, maybe they could think. They could think. Now I was scared. I remember our boss's friends were all raiding the armory, racing around like extras in an 80s action flick by the time I made the third floor guest room window. I flipped the safety off my weapon and flipped the guards off my sight. It was one of the newest gens, a fusion of light amplification, thermal imaging. I didn't need the second part because G's gave off no body heat. So when I saw the searing bright green signatures of several hundred runners, my throat tightened. Those weren't living dead. "There it is!" I heard them shout. "That's the house on the news!" They were carrying ladders, guns, babies. A couple of them had these heavy satchels strapped to their back. They were booking it for the front gate. Big, tough steel that was supposed to stop 1,000 ghouls. The explosion tore them right off their hinges, sent them flipping into the house like giant ninja stars. "Fire!" the boss was screaming into the radio. "Knock him down! Kill him! Shoot, shoot, shoot!" The quote-unquote attackers, for lack of a better label, stampeded the house. The courtyard was full of parked vehicles, sports cars and Hummers, and even a monster truck belonging to some NFL cat. Frickin' fireballs, all of them, blowing over on their sides or just burning in place. The thick, oily smoke from their tires blinding and choking everyone. All you could hear was gunfires, ours and theirs, and not just our private security team. Any big shot who wasn't crapping his pants either had it in his head to be a hero or felt he had to protect his rep in front of his peeps. A lot of them demanded their entourage protect them. Some did, those poor 20-year-old personal assistants who'd never fired a gun in their lives. They didn't last very long. But then there were also those peons who turned and joined the attackers. I saw this one queenie hairdresser stab an actress in the mouth with a letter opener, and ironically, I watched Mr. Get It Done try to wrestle a grenade away from the talent show guy before it went off in their heads. It was bedlam. Exactly what you thought the end of the world was supposed to look like. Part of the house was burning, blood everywhere. Bodies, or bits of them, were spewed all over the expensive stuff. I met the whore's rat dog. We were both heading for the back door. He looked at me. I looked at him. If it had been a conversation, it probably would have gone like this. What about your master? What about yours? Fuck him. That was the attitude among a lot of the hired guns. The reason I hadn't fired a shot all night. We'd been paid to protect rich people from zombies. Not against other, not so rich people. Just wanted a safe place to hide. You could hear them shouting as they charged in through the front door. Not, grab the booze or rape the bitches. It was, put out the fire and get the women and kids upstairs. I stepped over Mr. Political Comedy Guy on my way out to the beach. He and this chick, this leathery old blonde who I thought was supposed to be his political enemy, were going at it like there was no tomorrow. And hey, maybe for them, there wasn't. I made it out to the sand, found a surfboard, probably worth more, house I grew up in, and started paddling for the lights on the horizon. There were a lot of boats on the water that night, a lot of people getting out of Dodge. I hoped one of them might give me a ride as far as New York Harbor. Hopefully, I could bribe them with a pair of diamond earrings. He finishes his shot of rum, signals for another. Sometimes I ask myself, why didn't they all just shut the fuck up, you know? Not just my boss, but all of those pampered parasites. They had the means to stay out of harm's way. Why didn't they use it? Go to Antarctica or Greenland, or just stay where they are, but stay the hell out of the public eye. Then again, maybe they couldn't. Like a switch you just can't turn off. Maybe it's what made them who they were in the first place. What the hell do I know? The waiter arrives with another shot. Sean flicks a silver rand coin to him. If you got it, flaunt it. Okay. And we're going to briefly pause there so we can run the ads and I can run to the toilet. Everyone is having a good time so far. Like I said, I knew this was getting to the meat and potatoes of it, so it's been very, very good. Right. So, Rat King, if you want to run the ads as soon as you can, buddy. And I will be back very briefly. Okay. Right, we'll chill here for a few minutes. Let me check some questions here. Dorn, yes, that was a female Russian soldier in that particular interview. So we'll just wait a few minutes. Yes, I hope people have been enjoying. If there's any questions y'all have, any sort of or just anything you want to chat about while we're waiting for the ads to end, now would be the time to do it. Gives me a chance to catch my breath. Otherwise, I'm going to be fairly quiet as like I said, I kind of catch my breath because doing these book readings are actually surprisingly straining. Like you think, oh, you're just sitting there reading a book, but having to keep up the cadence, the volume of speaking, and kind of going pretty much nonstop is a lot more tiring than I think people realize. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this. This has been super good show book. Uh, yes, they did. Baron in this universe, yes. The isn't it called that today? No, it's called the Russian. Is it Russian Federation? Yeah, I guess they must have gone back to it after the war, or even during the war. Yeah, the Holy Russian Empire was the OG one, but Indies Federation. Yeah, no, the Holy Russian Empire. Yeah, they're still called the Holy Russian Empire in this world. Debt. Yes, you did. Um, the child did describe the zombie. So there's a brief moment where let me find it here. Oh wow, we've gone through way more books than or way more pages than I realized. Sharon mimics. Yeah, no. So the child was the one that was mimicking the sound. The sound was mimicking the zombies. And the thing is, her mother was trying to strangle her, but she ended up getting saved. The child ended up getting saved by someone else, who then brought the child out of the hospital, not hospital, out of the church it before it got overrun by zombies. Okay, right. Where were we? Where were we? Where were we? Okay, I think everyone is back. Ads are over. Yes, so at the time of the interview, Dorn, it has been, I believe, it's either 15 or 20 years. No, that's not 15, 20. It's like, it's one thing it's been 10 years after the end of World War Z, after the end of Great Panic. And the child in the interview was an adult, but they were what was known as a feral child. They were someone who grew up without getting any kind of education or even social interaction during the war. And so, despite the fact that physically they could be 18 to 20, they still have the brain of a 4-year-old. They're still incredibly mentally undeveloped. So that's why they were talking the way they were talking, despite looking like, a 20-year-old supermodel. Okay. So, I think it is time to keep going. Once again, chat, I will see you all in a short while. Ice City, Greenland. Pretext. From the surface, all that is visible are the funnels. The massive apologies about that. From the start, from the surface, all that is visible are the funnels. The massive, carefully sculpted wind catchers that continue to bring fresh, albeit cold, air to the 300-kilometer maze below. Few of the 250,000 people who once inhabited this hand-carved marvel of engineering have remained. Some stay to encourage the small but growing tourist trade. Some are here as custodians, living on the pension that goes with UNESCO's renewed World Heritage Program. Some, like Ahmed Farakanian, formerly Major Farakanian of the Iranian Revolution Guards or Air Force, nowhere else to go. End of pretext. India and Pakistan. Like North and South Korea, or NATO and the old Warsaw Pact, if two sides were going to use nuclear weapons against each other, it had to be India and Pakistan. Everyone knew it, everyone expected it, and that is exactly why it didn't happen. Because the danger was so omnipresent, all the machinery had been put in place over the years to avoid it. The hotline between the two capitals was in place, ambassadors were on a first-name basis, and generals and politicians and everyone involved in the process was trained to make sure the day they all feared never came. No one could have imagined it, I certainly didn't, that events would unfold as they did. The infection hadn't hit us as hard as some other countries. Our land was very mountainous. Transportation was difficult. Our population was relatively small, given the size of our country, and when you consider that many of our cities could be easily isolated by a proportionally large military, it is not difficult to see how optimistic our leadership was. The problem was refugees, millions of them from the east, millions, streaming across Balochistan, throwing our plans into disarray. So many areas were already infected, great swarms slouching toward our cities. Our border guards were overwhelmed, entire outposts buried under waves of ghouls. There was no way to close the border and at the same time deal with our outbreaks. We demanded that the Pakistanis get control of their people. They assured us they were doing all they could. We knew they were lying. The majority of refugees came from India, just passing through Pakistan in an attempt to reach someplace safe. Those in Islamabad were quite willing to let them go. Better to pass the problem along to another nation than have to deal with it themselves. Perhaps if we could have combined our forces, coordinated a joint operation at some appropriately defensible location. I know the plans were on the table. Pakistan's south-central mountains, the Pab, the Kurthar, and the central Brauhi range. We could have stopped any number of refugees or living dead. Our plan was refused. Some paranoid military attaché at their embassy told us outright that any foreign troops on their soil would be seen as a declaration of war. I don't know if their president ever saw our proposal. Our leaders never spoke to him directly. You see what I mean about India and Pakistan? We didn't have their relationship. The diplomatic machinery was not in place. For all we know, this little shit-eating colonel informed his government that we were attempting to annex their western provinces. But what could we do? Every day, hundreds of thousands of people crossed our border, and of those, perhaps tens of thousands were infected. We had to take decisive action. We had to protect ourselves. There is a road that runs between our two countries. It is small by your standards, not even paved in most places. but it was the main southern artery in Baluchistan. To cut it at just one place, the Ketch River Bridge would have effectively sealed off 60% of all refugee traffic. I flew the mission myself, at night, the heavy escort. You didn't need image intensifiers. You could see the headlights from miles away. A long, thin, white trail in the darkness. I could even see small arms flashes. The area was heavily infested. I targeted the bridge's center foundation, which would be the hardest to repair. The bombs separated cleanly. They were high explosive, conventional ordnance, just enough to do the job. American aircraft, from what used to be our allies of convenience, used to destroy a bridge built with American aid for the same purpose. The irony not lost on high command. Personally, I could have cared less. As soon as I felt my phantom lighten, I hit my burner, waited for my observer planes to report, and prayed with all my might that the Pakistanis wouldn't retaliate. Of course, my prayers went unanswered. 3 hours later, their garrison at Kila Safed shot up our border station. I know now that our president and Ayatollah were willing to stand down. We'd gotten what we wanted. They'd gotten their revenge. Tit for tat. Let it go. But who was going to tell the other side? Their embassy in Tehran had destroyed codes and radios. That son of a bitching colonel had shot himself rather than betray any state secrets. We had no hotline, no diplomatic channels. We didn't know how to contact the Pakistani leadership. We didn't even know if there was any leadership left. It was such a mess. Confusion turning to anger turning on our neighbors. Every hour, conflict escalated. Border clashes, airstrikes. It happened so fast. Just 3 days of conventional warfare, neither side having any clear objective. Just panicked rage. He shrugs. We created a beast, nuclear monster that neither side could tame. Tehran, Islamabad, Qom, Lahore, Bandar, Abbas, Ormara, Imam Khomeini, Faisalabad. No one knows how many died in the blasts, or would die when the radiation clouds began to spread over our country, over India, Southeast Asia, the Pacific, over America. No one thought it could happen, not between us. For God's sakes, they helped us build our nuclear program from the ground up. They supplied the materials, the technology, the third-party brokering with North Korea and Russian renegade. We wouldn't have been a nuclear power if it wasn't for our fraternal Muslim brothers. No one would have expected it, but then again, no one expected the dead to rise, now would they? Only one could have foreseen this. I don't believe in him anymore. Denver, Colorado, USA. Pretext. My train is late. The western drawbridge is being tested. Adwainio doesn't seem to mind waiting for me at the platform. We shake hands together under the station's mural of victory, easily the most recognizable image of the American experience in World War Z. Originally taken from a photograph, it depicts a squad of soldiers standing on the New Jersey side of the Hudson River, their backs turned to us as they watch dawn break over Manhattan. My host looks very small and frail next to these towering two-dimensional icons. Like most men of his generation, Todd Wino is old before his time, with an expanding paunch, receding, graying hair, and 3 deep, parallel scars down the side of his right cheek. It would be difficult to guess that this former US Army infantryman is still, at least chronologically, at the beginning of his life. End of pretext. The sky was red that day. All the smoke, crap that had been filling the air all summer, put everything in an amber red light, like looking at the world through hell-colored glasses. That's how I first saw Yonkers, this little depressed, rust-colored burb just north of New York City. I don't think anybody ever heard of it. I sure as hell hadn't. And now it's up there with, like, Pearl Harbor. No, not Pearl. That was a surprise attack. This was more like Little Bighorn, where we, well, at least the people in charge, they knew what was up, or they should have. The point is, it wasn't a surprise. The war, emergency, or whatever you want to call it, it was already on. It had been, 3 months? Since everyone jumped on the panic train. You remember what it was like. People just freaking out, boarding up their houses, stealing food, guns, shooting everything that moved. They probably killed more people, the Rambos and the runaway fires, and the traffic accidents, and the whole shitstorm that we now call the Great Panic. I think that killed more people at first than Zack. I guess I can see why the powers that be thought that one big stand-up battle was such a good idea. They wanted to show the people that they were still in charge, get them to calm the hell down so they could deal with the real problem. I get it. And because they needed a propaganda smackdown, I ended up in Yonkers. It actually wasn't the worst place to make a stand. Part of the town sat right in this little valley. Right over the West Hills, you had the Hudson River. The Sawmill River Parkway ran right through the center of our main line of defense, and the refugees streaming down the freeway were leading the dead right to us. It was a natural choke point, and it was a good idea. The only good idea that day. Todd reaches for another Q, the homegrown American variety cigarette, so named for its 1/4 tobacco content. Why didn't they put us on the roofs? They had a shopping center, couple of garages, big buildings with nice flat tops. They could have put a whole company right above the A&P. We could have seen the whole valley, and we would have been completely safe from attack. There was this apartment building, about 20 stories. I think each floor had a commanding view of the freeway. Why wasn't there a rifle team in each window? You know where they put us? Right down on the ground. Right behind sandbags or in fighting holes. We wasted so much time, so much energy preparing these elaborate fighting positions. Good, quote-unquote, cover and concealment, they told us. Cover and concealment? Cover means physical protection, conventional protection from small arms and artillery or airdropped ordnance. That sound like the enemy we were about to go up against? Was Zack now calling in airstrikes and fire missions? Why the hell were we worried about concealment when the whole point of the battle was to get Zack to come directly at us? So back-asswards, all of it. I'm sure whoever was in charge must have been one of the last Fulda fucked You know, those generals who spent their nard-dropping years training to defend West Germany from Ivan. Tight-assed, narrow-minded, probably pissed off from so many years of brush fire war. He must have been an FF, because everything we did freaking stunk of Cold War static defense. You know, they even tried to dig fighting holes for the tanks? The engineers blasted them right out of the A&P parking lot. You had tanks? Dude, we had everything. Tanks, Bradleys, Humvees armed with everything from 50 cals to these new Vasilek heavy mortars. At least those might have been useful. We had Avenger Humvee mounted Stinger surface-to-air missile sets. We had this AVLB portable bridge layer system. Perfect for the 3-inch deep creek that ran by the freeway. We had a bunch of XM5 electronic warfare vehicles, all crammed with radar and jamming gear. And oh yeah, we even had a whole FOL, family of latrine, just plopped right there in the middle of everything. Why, when the water pressure was still on and the toilets were still flushing in every building and house in the neighborhood, there was so much we didn't need. So much shit that only blocked traffic and looked pretty. And that's what I think they were really for. Just to look pretty. For the press. Hell yeah. There must have been at least one reporter for every 2 or 3 uniforms. One on foot and in vans. I don't know how many news choppers must have been circling. You'd think with so many, they'd spare a few to try and rescue people from Manhattan. Hell yeah, I think it was all for the press. Show them our big green kill power. Or tan, or... Some were just back from the desert. They hadn't even been repainted yet. Some of it, so much of it was for show. Not just the vehicles, but us as well. They had us in Mop 4, dude. Mission-orientated protective posture. Big, bulky suits and masks that were supposed to protect you from a radioactive or biochem environment. Would your superiors have believed the undead virus was airborne? If that's true, why didn't they protect the reporters? Why didn't our quote-unquote superiors wear them? Or anyone else immediately behind the line? They were cool and comfortable in their BDUs while we sweated under layers of rubber, charcoal, and thick, heavy body armor. And what genius thought to put us in body armor anyway? Because the press reamed them for not having enough in the last war? Why the hell do you need a helmet when you're fighting a living corpse? They're the ones who need helmets, not us. And then you've got the net rigs. The Land Warrior Combat Integration System. It was this whole personal electronic suite that allowed each one of us to link up with each other and the higher-ups to link up with us. Through your eyepiece, you could download maps, GPS data, real-time satellite recon. You could find your exact position on a battlefield, your buddies' positions, the bad guys. You could actually look through the video camera on your weapon, or anyone else's, to see what's over a hedge or around a corner. Land Warrior allowed every soldier to have the information of an entire command post, and let the command post control those soldiers as a single unit. Netrocentric. That's what I kept hearing from the officers in front of the cameras. Netrocentric and hyperwar. Cool terms, but they didn't mean shit when you're trying to dig a fighting hole with mop gear and body armor, and Land Warrior and standard combat load. And all of it on the hottest day in what was one of the hottest summers on record. I can't believe I was still standing when Zack began to show up. It was just a trickle at first. Ones and twos staggering between the abandoned cars that jammed the deserted freeway. At least the refugees had been evacuated. Oh, okay. That was another thing they did right. Picking a choke point and clearing the civilians. Great job. Everything else. Zack started entering the kill zone, the one designated for the MLRS. I didn't hear the rockets launch. My hood muffled the noise, but I saw them streak towards the target. I saw them arch on their way down as their casings broke away to reveal all those little bomblets on plastic streamers. They're about the size of a hand grenade, anti-personnel with a limited anti-armor capacity. They scattered among the G's, detonating once they hit the road or an abandoned car. Their gas tanks went up in like little volcanoes, geysers of fire and debris that added to the steel rain. I gotta be honest, it was a rush. Dudes were cheering in their mics. Me too. Watching ghouls start to tumble. I'd say there were maybe 30, maybe 40 or 50 zombies spread out all across the half-mile stretch of freeway. The opening bombardment took out at least 3/4 of them. Only 3/4? Todd finishes his cigarette in one long, angry drag. Immediately, he reaches for another. Yep, and that's what should have made us worry right then and there. Steel rain hit each and every single one of them, shredded their inside. Organs and flesh were scattered all over the damn place, dropping from their bodies as they came toward us. Headshots. They're trying to destroy the brain, not the body. And as long as they've got a working thinker and some mobility, some are still walking, others too thrashed to stand were crawling. Yeah, we should have worried, but there wasn't time. The trickle was now turning into a stream. More G's, dozens now, thick among the burning cars. Funny thing about Zack, you always think he's going to be dressed in his Sunday best. That's how the media portrayed them, right? Especially in the beginning. G's in business suits and dresses, like a cross-section of everyday America. Only dead. That's not what they looked like at all. Most infected, the early infected, the ones who went in that first wave, they either died under treatment, at home in their own beds. Most were either in hospital gowns or pajamas and nightshirts. Some were in their sweats or their undies, or just naked. A lot of them completely buck bare. You could see their wounds, the dried marks on their bodies, the gouges that made you shiver even inside that sweltering gear. The second steel rain didn't have half the impact of the first. No more gas tanks to catch. And now, the more tightly packed G's just happened to be shielding each other from a possible head wound. I wasn't scared. Not yet. Maybe my wood was gone, but I was pretty sure it'd be back when Zack entered the army's kill zone. Again, I couldn't hear the paladin too far back up the hill, but I sure heard and saw their shells land. These were standard HE-155s, a high explosive core with a fragmentation case. They did even less damage than the rockets. Why is that? No balloon effect for one. When a bomb goes off close to you, it causes the liquid in your body to burst, literally, like a frickin' balloon. That doesn't happen with Zack. Maybe because he carries less bodily fluid than us, or because that fluid's more like a gel. I don't know. But it didn't do shit. Neither did the SNT effect. What is SNT? Sudden nerve trauma. I think that's what you call it. It's another effect of close-in high explosives. The trauma is so great sometimes that your organ, your brain, all of it, just shuts down like God flicking your life switch. Something to do with electrical impulses or whatnot. I don't know, I'm not a fucking doctor. But that didn't happen. Not once. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like Zack just skipped through the barrage unscathed. We saw bodies blown to shit, tossed into the air, ripped to pieces, even complete heads, live heads, with eyes and jaws still moving, popping sky high like frickin' crystal corks. We were taking them down, no doubt, but not as many or as fast as we needed to. The stream was now like a river, a flood of bodies, slouching, moaning, stepping over toward their mangled bros as they rolled slowly and steadily towards us, like a slow motion wave. The next kill zone was direct fire from heavy arms. Hank's main 120s and Bradleys with their chain guns and FOT missiles. The Humvees also began to open up, mortars and missiles, and the Mark 19s, which are like machine guns but firing grenades. The Comanches came whining in at what felt like inches above our heads, with chains and hellfires and Hydra rocket pods. It was a fucking meat grinder, a wood chipper, organic matter clouding like sawdust above the hole. Nothing can survive this, I was thinking, and for a little while it looked like I was right, until the fire started to die. Started to die? Petering out, withering. For a second he is silent, and then angrily his eyes refocus. No one thought about it. No one. Don't pull my pud with stories about budget cuts and supply problems. The only thing in short supply was common fucking sense. Not one of those West Point War College medals up their ass 4-star fart bags said, "Hey, we got plenty of fancy weapons. We got enough shit for them to shoot." No one thought about how many rounds the artillery would need for a sustained operation. How many rockets for the MLRS? How many canister shots? The tanks had these things called canister shots. Basically a giant shotgun shell. They fired these little tungsten balls. Not perfect, you know, like wasting 100 balls for every G, but fuck, dude, at least it was something. Each Abrams only had 3. 3 out of a loadout of 40. The rest were standard heat or sabo. Do you know what a silver bullet, armor-piercing, depleted uranium dart is going to do to a group of walking corpses? Nothing. Do you know what it feels to see a 60-something ton tank fire into a crowd with absolutely ass-all result? 3 canister rounds. What about flechettes? That's the weapon we always hear about these days. Flechettes. These little steel spikes, they turn any weapon into an instant scattergun. We talk about them like they're a new invention, but we had them as far back as, like, Korea. We had them for the Hydra rockets and the Mark 19s. Just imagine that. Just one 19 firing 350 rounds a minute. Each round holding like 102 spikes. Maybe it wouldn't have turned the tide. God damn it. The fire wasn't dying. Zack was still coming. And the fear, everyone was feeling it. In the orders from the squad leaders, in the actions of the men around me. That little voice in the back of your head that keeps squeaking. Oh shit. We were the last line of defense, the afterthought when it came to firepower. We were supposed to pick off the random lucky G who happened to slip through the giant bitch slap of our heavier stuff. Maybe 1 in 3 of us was expected to fire his weapon. 1 in every 10 was expected to score a kill. They came by the thousands, spilling over the freeway guardrails, down the side streets, around the houses, through them. So many of them, their moans so loud they echoed through our hoods. We flipped our safeties off, sighted our targets. The order came to fire. I was a SAW 3 gunner, the light machine gun that you're supposed to fire in short, controlled bursts, about as long as it takes to say die motherfucker die. The initial burst was too low. I caught one square in the chest. I watched him fly backward, hit the asphalt, and then get right back up again as if nothing had happened. When they got back up, dude, the cigarette has burned down to his fingers. He drops and crushes it without noticing. I did my best to control my fire and my sphincter. Just go for the head, I kept telling myself. Keep it together, just go for the head. And all the time, my saws chattering, die motherfucker die. We could have stopped them. We should have. 1 guy with a rifle, that's all you need, right? Professional soldiers, trained marksmen. How could they get through? They still ask that. Critics and armchair patons who weren't there. Think it's that simple? You think that after being trained to aim for the center mass your whole military career, you're suddenly an expert. You're suddenly making expert headshot every time? You think in that straitjacket and suffocation hood, it's easy to recharge a clip or clear a weapon jam? You think that after watching all the wonders of modern warfare fall flat on their high-tech hyper ass, that after already living 3 months through the Great Panic and watching everything you knew was reality be eaten alive by an enemy that wasn't even supposed to exist, that you're gonna keep a cool fucking head and a steady fucking trigger finger? He stabs that finger at me. Well, we did. We still managed to do our job and make Zack pay for every fucking inch. Maybe if we'd had more men, more ammo, maybe if we'd just been allowed to focus on our job. His fingers curled back into a fist. Land warrior. High-tech, high-priced, high-profile, netro-fucking-centric land warrior. To see what was in front of our face was bad enough, but spybird uplinks were also showing how truly large the horde was. We might be facing thousands, but behind them were millions. Remember, we were taking on the bulk of New York City's infestation. This was only the head of one really long, undead snake, stretching all the way back to Times fucking Square. We didn't need to see that. I didn't need to know that. That little scared voice wasn't so little anymore. Oh shit, oh shit! And suddenly, it wasn't in my head anymore. It was in my earpiece. Every time some jerk-off couldn't control his mouth, Land Warrior made sure the rest of us heard it. There's too many! We gotta get the fuck out of here! Someone heard from another platoon. I didn't know his name, started hollering, "I hit him in the head and he didn't die! They don't die when you shoot them in the head!" I'm sure he must have missed a brain. It can happen. Found just grazing the inside of the skull. Maybe if he'd been calm and used his own brain, he would have realized that. Panic's even more infectious than the Z germ, and the wonders of the land warrior allowed that germ to become airborne. What? They don't die? Who said that? You shot it in the head? Holy crap, they're indestructible! All over the net, you could hear this browning shorts across the info superhighway. "Everyone pipe down," someone shouted. "Hold the line, stay off the net." An older voice, you could tell, but suddenly it was drowned out in this scream, and suddenly my eyepiece, and I'm sure everyone else's, was filled with the sight of blood spurting into a mouth of broken teeth. The sight was from a dude in the yard of a house behind the line. The owners must have left a few reanimated family members locked in when they bugged out. Maybe the shock from the explosions weakened the door or something. Because they came bursting out right into this poor bastard. His gun camera recorded the whole thing. It fell right at the perfect angle. There were 5 of them. A man, a woman, 3 kids. They had him pinned on his back. The man was on his chest. The kids had him by the arms, trying to bite through his suit. The woman tore off his mask. You could see the terror in his face. I'll never forget the shriek as she bit off his chin and lower lip. "They're behind us," someone was shouting. "They're coming out of the houses. The line's broken. They're everywhere." Suddenly, the image went dark, cut off from an external source. And the voice, the older voice, was back again. "Stay off the net," he ordered, trying real hard to control his voice. And then the link went dead. I'm sure it must have taken more than a few seconds. It had to, even if they'd been hovering above our heads. But it seemed like right after the communications line blacked out, the sky was suddenly screaming with JSFs. I didn't see them release their ordnance. I was at the bottom of my hole, cursing the army and God, and my own hands for not digging deeper. The ground shook. The sky went dark. Debris was everywhere. Earth burning whatever flying above my head. I felt this weight slam between my shoulder blades, soft and heavy. I rolled over, and it was a head and a torso, all charred black and still smoking and still trying to bite. I kicked it away and scrambled out of my hole seconds after the last of the JSOW fell. I found myself staring into this cloud of black smoke where the horde had been. The freeway, the houses, everything was covered by this midnight cloud. I vaguely remember other guys getting out of their holes, hatches opening on tanks and Bradleys, everyone just staring into the darkness. There was a quiet stillness that in my mind lasted for hours. And then they came, right out of the smoke, like a frickin' little kid's nightmare. Some were steaming, some were even still burning, some were walking, some crawling, some just dragging themselves along on their torn bellies. Maybe 1 in 20 was still able to move, which left, a couple thousand? And behind them, mixing with their ranks and pushing steadily towards us, the remaining million that the airstrike hadn't even touched. And that was when the line collapsed. I don't remember it all at once. I see these flashes, people running, grunts, reporters, I remember a newsman with a big Yosemite Sam mustache trying to pull a Beretta from his vest before 3 burning G's pulled him down. I remember a dude forcing open the door of a news van, jumping in, throwing out a pretty blonde reporter, and trying to drive away before a tank crushed them both. 2 news choppers crashed together, showering us with their own steel rain. One Comanche driver, brave, beautiful motherfucker, tried to turn his rotor into the incoming G's. The blade diced a path right down their mass before catching on a car and hurling him into the A&P. Shooting. Crazy, random shooting. I took a round in the sternum in my armor's center plate. I felt like I'd run into a wall, even though I was standing still. It knocked me on my ass. Couldn't breathe. Just then, some dumbass lobbed a flashbang right in front of me. The world was white. My ears were ringing. Froze. Hands were clawing me, grabbing my arms. I kicked and punched. I felt my crotch get warm and wet. I shouted, couldn't hear my own voice. More hands, stronger, trying to haul me somewhere. Kicking, squirming, crushing, cursing, crying. Suddenly, fist clocked me in the jaw. It didn't knock me out, but I was suddenly relaxed. These were my buddies. Zach, don't punch. They dragged me into the closest Bradley. My vision cleared just long enough to see the line of light vanish with the closing hatch. He reaches with it for another cue, then abruptly decides against it. I know professional historians like to talk about how Yonkers represented a catastrophic failure of the modern military apparatus. How it proved the old adage that armies perfect the art of fighting the last war just in time for the next one. Personally, I think that's a big old sack of it. Sure, we were unprepared. Our tools, our training, everything I just talked about, all in one Class A, gold standard cluster. But the weapon that really failed wasn't something that rolled off an assembly line. It's as old as, I don't know, I guess as old as war. It's fear, dude. Just fear. And you don't have to be Sun freaking Tzu to know that real fighting isn't about killing or even hurting the other guy. It's about scaring him enough to call it a day. Break their spirit. That's what every successful army goes for. From tribal face paint to the blitzkrieg to, what did we call the first round of Gulf War II? Shock and awe? Perfect name. Shock and awe. But what if the enemy can't be shock and awe? Not just won't, but biologically can. That's what happened that day outside New York City. That's the failure that almost lost us the whole damn war. The fact we couldn't shock and awe Zach boomeranged right back in our faces and actually allowed Zach to shock and awe us. They're not afraid. No matter what we do, no matter how many we kill, they will never, ever be afraid. Yonkers was supposed to be the day we restored confidence to the American people. Instead, we practically told them to kiss their ass goodbye. If it wasn't for the South African plan, I have no doubt we'd all be slouching and moaning right now. The last thing I remember was the Bradley being tossed like a Hot Wheels car. I don't know what hit it, but I'm guessing it must have been close. I'm sure had I still been standing out there, exposed, I wouldn't have been standing here today. Have you ever seen the effects of a thermobaric weapon? Have you ever asked anyone with stars on their shoulders about them? I bet my ballsack you'll never get the full story. You'll hear about heat and pressure, the fireball that continues expanding, exploding, and literally crushing and burning everything in its path. Heat and pressure. That's what thermobaric means. Sounds nasty, right? What you won't hear about is the immediate after effect. The vacuum created when that fireball suddenly contracts. Anyone left alive will either have the air sucked right out of their lungs, or, and they'll never admit this to anyone, have their lung ripped right out of their mouth. Obviously, no one's going to live long enough to tell that kind of horror story. Probably why the Pentagon's been so good at covering up the truth. But if you ever see a picture of a G, or even an example of a real walking specimen, and he's got both airbags and a windpipe just dangling out from his lips, make sure you give him my number. I'm always up for meeting another veteran of Yonkers. And that is the perfect time to take a break, because the ads are just about to. Oh, God. So there you go. There's the much talked about Battle of Yonkers. Oh. Oh. Nice. Nice water. Need a wee bit of water. Who the fuck is pinging me? Oh, cheers, Erlich. I just got your message. Thank you. Oh. Oh, Christ. Of course it is. So, I hope everyone's been enjoying so far. We're gonna keep going here for probably another hour. Ah, Christ. Oh my God. The worst book to fall asleep to. I'm sorry, Jimmy. I'm sorry. Oh boy. Oh my God, my neck. Oh, did we get this guy's name? Give me a moment here. I think we did. I'm pretty sure we got his name. I just gotta scroll up here. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Oh, Todd. That was the character's name. Yeah. Todd Wino. No problem, Finn. No problem. Oh shit! I'm losing where I was. Oh no! Where was I? No. Wasn't there. Oh, I misclicked. Oh, there we are. Found it. We're good. We're good. Oh my God almighty. So yes, we're gonna just take a few minutes break here. People get through the ads. Oh my goodness. So we're getting to a section now where I am probably going to start butchering the names even more so than I already have. Because we're about to go into apparently the United States of Southern Africa. So my apologies in advance for the awful pronunciations you're about to hear. Oh. Oh, my neck. Let me get my oh, I sense a scam. Oh, 100% is a scam, yep. That is a well, it's probably a scam account. Just join the Discord, but we'll see. Ah, good. Are people back from the ads? Do y'all return from the void? Yeah, like I said, we're gonna go for probably 1 more hour here. Um, these chapters are getting much longer because, like I said, we are now into the real meat and potato of the zombie war. Like the Battle of Yonkers is considered one of the major sections of it. So we're now about to get to what I believe is the South African plan. Oh, okay. So, if everyone is seemingly back, we will get going. See y'all in a few minutes, chat. Robben Island, Cape Town Province, United States of Southern Africa. Zolelwa Azania greets me at his writing desk, inviting me to switch places with him so I can enjoy the cool ocean breeze from his window. He apologizes for the mess and insists on clearing the notes off his desk before we continue. Mr. Azania is halfway through his third volume of Rainbow Fist, South Africa at War. This volume happens to be about the subject we are discussing, the turning point against the living dead, the moment when his country pulled itself back to the brink. Dispassionate, a rather mundane word, describe one of history's most controversial figures. Some revere him as a savior, some revile him as a monster. But if you ever met Paul Redeker, ever discussed his views of the world and the problems, or more importantly, the solutions to the problems that plague the world, probably the one word that would always cling to your impression of the man is dispassionate. Paul always believed, well, perhaps not always, but at least in his adult life, that humanity's one fundamental flaw was emotion. He used to say that the heart should only exist to pump blood to the brain, that anything else was a waste of time and energy. His papers from university, all dealing with alternate solutions to historical, societal quandaries, were what first brought him to the attention of the apartheid government. Many psychobiographers have tried to label him a racist, but in his own words, racism is a regrettable byproduct of irrational emotion. Others have argued that, in order for a racist to hate one group, he must at least love another. Redeker believed both love and hate to be irrelevant. To him, they were impediments of the human condition. And in his words again, imagine what could be accomplished if the human race would only shed its humanity. Evil? Most would call it that, while others, particularly that small cadre in the center of Pretoria's power, believed it to be an invaluable source of liberated intellect. It was the early 1980s, critical time for the apartheid government. The country was resting on a bed of nails. You had the ANC, you had the Inkatha Freedom Party, you even had extremist right-wing elements of the Afrikaner population that would have liked nothing better than open revolt in order to bring about a complete racial showdown. On her border, South Africa faced nothing but hostile nations, and in the case of Angola, a Soviet-backed, Cuban-spearheaded civil war. Add to this mixture a growing isolation from the Western democracies, which included critical arms embargo. And it was no surprise that a last-ditch fight from survival was never far from Pretoria's mind. This is why they enlisted the aid of Mr. Redeker to revise the government's ultra-secret Plan Orange. Orange had been in existence since the apartheid first came to power in 1948. It was the doomsday scenario for the country's white minority. The plan to deal with an all-out uprising of its indigenous African population. Over the years, it had been updated with the changing strategic outlook of the region. Every decade, that situation grew more and more grim, with multiplying independence of her neighbor states and multiplying voices for freedom from the majority of her own people. Those in Pretoria realized that a full-blown confrontation might not just mean the end of the Afrikaner government, but the Afrikaners themselves. This is where Redeker stepped in. His revised Plan Orange, appropriately completed in 1984, was the ultimate survival strategy for the Afrikaner people. No variable was ignored. Population figures, terrain, resources, logistics. Redeker not only updated the plan to include both Cuba's chemical weapons and his own country's nuclear option, but also, this is what made Orange 84 so historic. The determination of which Afrikaners would be saved, which had to be sacrificed. Sacrificed? Redeker believed that to try to protect everyone stretched the government's resources to a breaking, thus dooming the entire population. He compared it to survivors from a sinking ship capsizing a lifeboat that simply did not have room for them all. Redeker had even gone so far as to calculate who should be quote-unquote brought aboard. He included income, fertility, an entire checklist of desirable qualities, including the subject's location to a potential crisis zone. The first casualty of the conflict must be our own sentimentality, was the closing statement for his proposal. Its survival will mean our destruction. Orange 84 was a brilliant plan. It was clear, logical, efficient, and it made Paul Redeker one of the most hated men in South Africa. His first enemies were some of the more radical fundamentalist Afrikaners, the racial ideologues, and the ultra-religious. Later, after the fall of apartheid, his name began circulating among the general population. Of course, he was invited to appear before the Truth and Reconciliation hearings, and of course, he refused. "I won't pretend to have a heart simply to save my skin," he stated publicly, adding, "No matter what I do, I'm sure they will come for me anyway." And they did, although it probably was not in the manner Redeker could have expected. It was during our Great Panic, which began several weeks before yours. Redeker was holed up in Drakensberg, in the Drakensberg's cabin he had bought with the accumulated profits of a business consultant. He liked business, you know. One goal, no soul, he used to say. He wasn't surprised when the door blew off its hinges and agents of the National Intelligence Agency rushed in. They confirmed his name, his identity, his past actions. They asked him point blank if he had been the author, Orange 84. He answered without emotion, naturally. He suspected, and accepted, this intrusion as a last-minute revenge killing. The world was going to hell anyway. Why not take a few apartheid devils down first? What he could never have predicted was the sudden lowering of their firearms, the removal of the gas mask, the NIA agents. They were of all colors: black, Asian, colored, and even a white man, tall Afrikaner who stepped forward, and without giving his name or rank, asked abruptly, "You've got a plan for this, don't you?" Redeker had. Indeed. Redeker had indeed been working on his own solution to the undead epidemic. What else could he do in his isolated hideaway? It had been an intellectual exercise. He never believed anyone would be left to read it. It had no name, as explained later, because names only exist to distinguish one from others, and until that moment, there had been no other plan like his. Once again, Redeker had taken everything into account. Not only the strategic situation of the country, but also the physiology, behavior, and quote-unquote combat doctrine of the living dead, but also the While you can research the details of the Redeker plan in any public library around the world, here are some of the fundamental keys. First of all, there was no way to save everyone. The outbreak was too far gone. The armed forces had already been too badly weakened to effectively isolate the threat and spread so thinly throughout the country. They could only grow weaker with each passing day. Our forces had to be consolidated, withdrawn to a special safe zone, hopefully would be aided by some natural obstacle such as mountains, rivers, or even an offshore island. Once concentrated within this zone, the armed forces could eradicate the infestation within its borders, then use what resources were available to defend it against further onslaughts of the living dead. That was the first part of the plan, and it made as much sense as any conventional military retreat. The second part of the plan dealt with the evacuation of civilians, and this could not have been envisioned by anyone else but Redeker. In his mind, only a small fraction of the civilian population would be evacuated to the safe zone. These people would be saved not only to provide a labor pool for the eventual wartime economic restoration, also to preserve the legitimacy and stability of the government, to prove to those within the zone that their leaders were, quote-unquote, looking out for them. There was another reason for this partial evacuation. An eminently logical and insidiously dark reason that many believe will forever ensure Redeker the tallest pedestal in the pantheon of hell. Those who were left behind were to be herded into special isolated zones. They were to be human bait, distracting the undead from following the retreating army to their safe zone. Redeker argued that these isolated, uninfected refugees must be kept alive, well defended, and even resupplied, if possible, so as to keep the undead hordes firmly rooted to the spot. You see the genius, the sickness? Keeping people as prisoners, because every zombie besieging those survivors will be one less zombie throwing itself against our defenses. That was the moment the Afrikaner agent looked up at Redeker, crossed himself, and said, "God help you, man." Another one said, "God help us all." That was the black one who appeared to be in charge of the operation. Now let's get him out of here. Within minutes, they were on a helicopter for Kimberly, the very underground base where Redeker had first written Orange 84. He was ushered into a meeting of the president's surviving cabinet, where his report was read aloud to the room. You should have heard the uproar, with no voice louder than the defense minister's. He was a Zulu, a ferocious man who'd rather be fighting in the streets than cowering in a bunker. The vice president was more concerned about public relations. He didn't want to imagine what his backside would be worth if news of this plan ever leaked to the population. The president looked almost personally insulted by Redeker. He physically grabbed the lapels of the safety and security minister and demanded why in the hell he brought this demented apartheid war criminal. The minister stammered that he didn't understand why the president was so upset, and it was he who gave the order to find Redeker. The president threw his hands in the air and shouted that he never gave such an order. Then, somewhere in the room, a faint voice said, I did. He had been sitting against the back wall. Now he stood, hunched over by age and supported by canes. The spirit as strong and vital as it had ever been. The elder statesman, the father of our new democracy, the man whose birth name had been Roli Halahal, which some have translated simply into troublemaker. As he stood, all others sat, all others except Paul Redeker. The old man locked eyes, smiled with that warm squint so famous the world over, and said, Molo, Bilobo Wam. Greetings, person of my region. He walked slowly over to Paul, turned to the governing body of South Africa, then lifted the pages from the Afrikaner's hand, and said in a suddenly loud and youthful voice, This plan will save our people. Then gesturing to Paul, he said, This man will save our people. And then came that moment, the one that historians will probably debate until the subject fades from memory. He embraced the white Afrikaner. To anyone else, this was simply his signature bear hug. But to Paul Redeker, I know that the majority of psychobiographers continue to paint this man without a soul. That is the generally accepted notion. Redeker, no feelings, no compassion, no heart. However, one of our most revered authors, Biko's old friend and biographer, postulates that Redeker actually a deeply sensitive man. Too sensitive, in fact, for life in apartheid South Africa. He insists that Redeker's lifelong jihad against emotion was the only way to protect his sanity from the hatred and brutality he witnessed on a daily basis. Not much is known about Redeker's childhood, whether he had parents or was raised by the state, whether he had friends or was ever loved in any way. Those who knew him from work are hard-pressed to remember witnessing any social interaction or even any physical act of warmth. The embrace of our nation's father, this genuine emotion, piercing his impenetrable shell. Azania smiles sheepishly. Perhaps this is all too sentimental. For all we know, he was a heartless monster and the old man's embrace had absolutely no impact. But I can tell you, that was the last day anyone ever saw Paul Rediker. Even now, no one really knows what happened to him. That is when I stepped in those chaotic weeks when the Rediker plan was implemented throughout the country. It took some convincing, to say the least, but once I'd convinced them that I'd worked for many years with Paul Rediker, and more importantly, I understood his way of thinking better than anyone left alive in South Africa. How could they refuse? I worked on the retreat. Then afterward, during the consolidation months, and right up until the end of the war. At least they were appreciative of my services. Why else would they grant me such luxurious accommodations? Tanya smiles. Paul Rediker, an angel and a devil. Some hate him, some worship him. Me? I just pity him. If he still exists, somewhere out there, I sincerely hope he's found his peace. After a parting embrace from my guests, I'm driven back to my ferry for the mainland. Security is tight as I sign out my entrance badge. The tall Afrikaner guard photographs me again. Be too careful, man, says, handing me the pen. A lot of people out there want to send him to hell. I sign next to my name, under the heading of Robben Island Psychiatric Institution. Name of patient you are visiting. Paul Rediker. Oh, good. Armagh, County Armagh, Ireland. Pretext. While not a Catholic himself, Philip Adler has joined the throngs of visitors to the Pope's wartime refuge. My wife is Bavarian, he explains in the bar of our hotel. She had to make the pilgrimage to St. Patrick's Cathedral. This is his first time away from Germany since the end of the war. Our meeting is accidental. He does not object to my request. Hamburg was heavily infested. They were in the streets, in the buildings, pouring out of the Neuer Elbtunnel. We tried to blockade it with civilian vehicles, but they were squirming through any open space like bloated, bloody worms. Refugees were all over. They'd come from as far away as Saxony, thinking they could escape by sea. The ships were long gone. The port was a mess. We had over 1,000 trapped Reynolds aluminum werk, and at least triple that at the Eurokai terminal. No food, no clean water, just waiting to be rescued, with the dead swarming outside. I don't know how many infected inside. The harbour was choked with corpses, but corpses that were still moving. We'd blasted them into the water with anti-riot water cannons. Saved ammo, and it helped keep the streets clear. It was a good idea until the pressure in the hydrants died. We'd lost our commanding officer 2 days earlier. Freak accident. One of our men had shot a zombie that was almost on top of him. The bullet had gone right through the creature's head, taking bits of diseased brain tissue out the other end and into the colonel's shoulder. Insane, eh? He turned over sector command to me before dying. My first official duty was to put him down. I'd set up our command post in the Renaissance Hotel. It was a decent location, good fields of fire with enough space to house our own unit and several hundred refugees. My men, those not involved in holding the barricades, were attempting to perform these conversions on similar buildings. With the roads blocked and trains inoperative, thought it was best to sequester as many civilians as possible. Yes, help would be coming. It was just a question of when it would arrive. I was about to organize a detail to scrounge for converted hand-to-hand weapons. We were running low on ammunition. When the order came to retreat, this was not unusual. Our unit had been steadily withdrawing since the first days of the panic. What was unusual, though, was the rally point. Division was using map grid coordinates the first time since the trouble began. Up until then, they had simply used civilian designations on an open channel. This was so refugees could know where to assemble. Now, it was a coded transmission from a map we hadn't used since the end of the Cold War. I had to check the coordinates 3 times to confirm. They put us at Schafstedt, just north of the Nordoste Canal. Might as well be fucking Denmark. We were also under strict orders not to move the civilians. Even worse, we were ordered not to inform them of our departure. This didn't make any sense. They wanted us to pull back to the Schleswig-Holstein, but leave the refugees behind? They wanted us to just cut and run? Had to be some kind of mistake. I asked for confirmation. I got it. Again, maybe they got the map wrong or had shifted codes without telling us. It wouldn't be their first mistake. I suddenly found myself speaking to General Lang, commander of the entire Northern Front. His voice was shaking. I could hear it even over the shooting. He told me the orders were not a mistake, that I was to rally what was left of the Hamburg garrison and proceed immediately north. This isn't happening, I told myself. Funny, eh? I could accept everything else that was happening. The fact that dead bodies were rising to consume the world. This, following orders that would indirectly cause a mass murder. Now, I am a good soldier, but I am also a West German. You understand the difference? In the East, they were told that they were not responsible for the atrocities of the Second World War. That as good communists, they were just as much victims of Hitler as anyone else. You understand why the skinheads and proto-fascists were mainly in the East? They did not feel the responsibility of the past, not like we did in the West. We were taught since birth to bear the burden of our grandfathers' shame. We were taught that, even if we wore a uniform, that our first sworn duty was to our conscience, no matter what the consequences. That is how I was raised. It is how I responded. I told Lang that I could not, in good conscience, obey this order, that I could not leave these people without protection. At this, he exploded. He told me that I would carry out my instructions, or I, and more importantly, my men, would be charged with treason and prosecuted with Russian efficiency. And this is what we've come to, I thought. We'd all heard of what was happening in Russia. The mutinies, the crackdown, the decimations. I looked around at all these boys, 18, 19 years old, all tired and scared and fighting for their lives. I couldn't do that to them. I gave the order, draw. How did they take it? There were no complaints, at least not to me. They fought a little amongst themselves. I pretended not to notice. They did their duty. What about the civilians? He pauses. We got everything we deserved. Where are you going? They shouted from the buildings. Come back, you cowards! I tried to answer. No, we're coming back for you, I said. We're coming back tomorrow with more men. Just stay where you are. We'll be back tomorrow. They didn't believe me. Fucking liar, I heard one woman shout. You're letting my baby die. Most of them didn't try to follow, too worried about the zombies in the streets. A few brave souls grabbed on to our armored personnel carriers. They tried to force their way down the hatches. We knocked them off. We had to button up as the ones trapped in buildings started throwing things, lamps, furnitures, down on us. One of my men was hit with a bucket filled with human waste. I heard a bullet clang off the hatch of my marder. On our way out of the city, we passed the last of our new rapid reaction stabilization unit. They had been badly mauled earlier in the week. I didn't know it at the time, but they were one of those units classified as expendable. They were detailed to cover our retreat, to prevent too many zombies or refugees from following us. They were ordered to hold to the end. Their commander was standing through the cupola of his leopard. I knew him. We'd served together as part of NATO's IFOR in Bosnia. Maybe it's melodramatic to say he saved my life, but he did take a Serbian's bullet that I'm sure was meant for me. Last time I saw him was in a hospital in Sarajevo, joking about getting out of this madhouse those people call a country. Now here we were, passing on the shattered autobahn in the heart of our homeland. We locked eyes, braided salutes. I ducked back into my APC and pretended to study my map so the driver wouldn't see my tears. When we get back, I told myself, I'm going to kill that son of a bitch. General Lang, I had it all planned. I would not look angry, nor not give him any reason to worry. I'd submit my report and apologize for my behavior. Maybe he'd want to give me some kind of pep talk, try to explain or justify our retreat. Good, I thought. I'd listen patiently, put him at ease. Then when he rose to shake my hand, I'd draw my weapon and blow his eastern brains out against the map of what used to be our country. Maybe his whole staff would be there, all the other little stooges who were just following orders. I'd get them all before they took me. It would be perfect. I wasn't going to just goose-step my way into hell like some good little Hitler Jugend. I'd show him and everyone else what it meant to be a real Deutsche Soldat. But that's not what happened? No. I did manage to make it into General Lang's office. We were the last unit across the canal. He'd waited for that. As soon as the report came in, sat down at his desk, signed a few final orders, addressed and sealed a letter to his family. Then, the bullet through his brain. I hate him even more now than I did on the road from Hamburg. Why is that? Because I now understand why we did what we did, the details of the Prachnau plan. Wouldn't this revelation engender sympathy for him? Are you kidding? That's exactly why I hate him. He knew that this was just the first step of a long war, and we were going to need men like him to lead it. Fucking coward. Remember what I said about being beholden to your conscience? You can't blame anyone else. Not the plan's architect, not your commanding officer, no one but yourself. You have to make your own choices and live every agonizing day the consequences of those choices. He knew this. That's why he deserted us like we deserted those civilians. He saw the road ahead. A steep, treacherous mountain road. we'd all have to hike that road, each of us dragging the boulder of what we'd done behind us. He couldn't do it. He couldn't shoulder the weight. Oh my goodness. Okay. Right, we're going to. Don't run the ads, Rat King. So yes, like Dorn said, yeah, a Bundeswehr unit would definitely revolt. Now, I'm going to pause here because I was planning to go till about 11, but to be honest, I can see the size of the next chapter and it's going to go well past the ad thing. And I'd rather not subject you to 3 minutes of ads for no reason. Because I don't want to stop in the middle of a chapter. Who is pinging me? Oh my god. Yes, I hope everyone has enjoyed our little session here. This book is really, really good. Really, really good. Yeah, for the World War Z, yeah, I'm definitely going to pause it here because I wanted to stop for 11. Oh boy, boy, boy. Let me get my headphones back on here. But yes, we are now in the real thick of the war. The South African plan has begun to be rolled out across the world. I enjoyed that because I didn't know what the South African plan was myself. I hadn't read this far into the book. So it was really, really that is a dark but terrifyingly efficient plan. Like you would have to be a truly cold motherfucker to even come up with that plan, let alone to implement it. But as they say, in those situations, that's what's needed. Well, no, General Lang was just someone who, he was one of the ones that had to implement it. Yeah, he obviously wasn't the one that did it because I did like that revelation. I love that little twist. Yes, no, so this is across the world. So the South African plan is this. Okay, I'll go through a more simplified version that's not filled with hyperbole. You pull back all of your military to a highly defensible location, be it a mountain, be it an offshore island, it doesn't matter. You pull your entire armed forces back, whatever's left. You essentially abandon the civilians, kind of. But what you do is you leave the civilians where they are, but you supply them where possible with guns, ammo, food, etc. via airdrops, so that the zombies will stay focused on the civilians while your armed forces are slowly rebuilding in the defensible location. And because I've read lore videos, I believe I know what the third part of the plan is. So, but I don't want to spoil it in case people haven't read it. So I'm gonna hold off on talking about that. If it's what I think it is, I could be wrong, but yeah. There's a reason why you have to leave them there, essentially. Well, no, another reason besides, yeah. But anyway, so yes, it's very, very, very good. I believe the World War Z game, I believe the very first level you play in that is actually takes place. It's either directly after or even possibly during the Battle of Yonkers. You get to see like the horde of Zeds, although obviously in the game they're sprinters, whereas in the book they're like Romero Chambers, which I frankly prefer, but infected are all the rage in video games. I need another fucking Shambler game, man. That's why I enjoy Project Zomboid, because you get to have proper Shamblers and realize that Shamblers can be just as big of a threat as sprinters, because you get lulled into a false sense of security by how slow they are, until all of a sudden you're surrounded by several hundred that have shuffled towards you. Yeah, like the early episodes of Walking Dead. Yeah. But yes, I hope you've all enjoyed. I'm gonna take. I was contemplating to keep going, but frankly, I'm gonna give my voice a rest, because these book reading streams are very straining on the voice, even with water. So tomorrow is Saturday. I don't really have any plans for tomorrow, so we're probably gonna do maybe some foxhole, possibly. I don't know, we'll see. Fair enough, Dorn. Fair enough. Now, one thing I want to say to everyone as well is, if you ever want to discuss stuff from the stream, like with the book now, if y'all want to discuss the book, feel free to use the Discord. You're more than welcome to. There's plenty of channels there you can use. Chat away about it. Oh. But other than that, I hope you all have a good evening. And we'll see y'all tomorrow. Hopefully. If nothing explodes. Alright. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.